Good evening and Shavua Tov, Happy New Week. Thank you for that beautiful Havdalah service, Rabbi Balik and Rabbi Miriam Jeris. And thank you to the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism for hosting this event tonight. Jews for Secular Democracy is an initiative of the Society for Humanistic Judaism, mobilizing Jewish voices for religious freedom. Through education and advocacy and informed by pluralistic Jewish values and traditions, Jews for Secular Democracy defends the separation of religion and government. And what I mean by pluralistic is that we hope to bring as many diverse Jewish approaches as possible to church-state separation issues, from secular to religious, from liberal to left of center. Actually, there is a remarkable consensus in the Jewish community across political and religious ideologies on issues of religious freedom that will be discussed tonight. And there are so many great people doing remarkable work to make positive change. And to that end, we'd like to thank the following organizations for co-sponsoring tonight's event: Detroit Jews for Justice, Distill Social, Femmes for Democracy, the Jewish Community Relations Council, AJC, Michigan Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Network, National Council of Jewish Women, the Social Action Committee of Temple Kol Ami, and again, our host, the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism. I'd also like to thank the donors and supporters of Jews for Secular Democracy, including the board of the Society for Humanistic Judaism, which Rabbi Jeff mentioned is convened here this weekend for its annual retreat, as well as the core of volunteers for Michigan Jews for Secular Democracy working with us on this initiative, some of whom are here tonight, and we thank you for your volunteerism. And if other folks want to get involved, please talk to me or Nomi afterwards. In seeking to reclaim the true meaning of religious freedom, we want to emphasize that the neutrality toward religion built into the US Constitution to not favor one religious perspective over all other perspectives is a historic innovation that has allowed religious minorities like Jews to thrive in America. We want all of our fellow Americans to understand that the First Amendment fosters inclusion and fairness and equality, and that these are foundational American values. We're honored to have with us today two leaders who embody these American values. Senator Rosemary Baer of West Bloomfield is serving her second term in the Michigan Senate representing District 13. Before pursuing public office, Senator Baer had a successful career in information technology, first as a computer engineer and later as a business leader. She co-founded the Michigan Council of Women in Technology, a nonprofit which provides STEM support for girls and women around Michigan. In 2018, Senator Baer was inspired to pursue public office following the events of the 2016 election. Something happened then. Having spent her career fighting for numerous social justice issues, running for office was a natural choice. Senator Baer flipped a historically Republican seat to Democratic for the first time in several years and we're a nonpartisan organization. And has continued to be a voice for all Michiganders. During her time in Lansing, she has fought for clean water rights, equitable funding for public education, ending gun violence in Michigan, and more. Most recently, Senator Baer was a driving force and leader for the first major gun violence reform legislation passed in Michigan in years. Senator Baer is a longtime resident of Oakland County and currently resides in West Bloomfield with her husband, John. Senator Jeremy Moss holds the distinction of having been the youngest ever elected official on the Southfield City Council in 2011 and has not let up on public service since. After City Council, he was elected to the Michigan House of Representatives, serving as the Democratic Caucus Whip, and then became the Assistant Democratic Leader in his first term in the Michigan Senate. Now serving his second term, he is the President pro tempore of the Michigan Senate. Senator Moss prioritizes policies supporting local government and local communities, as well as increasing transparency in state government. Always looking to build relationships across the aisle, he has successfully had legislation signed into law to reduce unfair employment barriers for people with past criminal records, help homeowners make home improvements by lowering property taxes, allowing public-private partnerships to rebuild crumbling bridges, and to create more pathways for students who dropped out of high school so they can complete their degree. Moss earned his bachelor's degree in journalism from Michigan State University, where he participated in multiple student-led humanitarian aid missions nationally and across the globe. He lives in Southfield. And moderating this discussion is Nomi Joyrich. Nomi Joyrich is the Michigan Director for Jews for Secular Democracy and an organizer for Michigan Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Network. Nomi's work supporting interfaith concerns and social justice issues spans decades and includes political activism at all levels of government. Nomi's current focus is on reproductive freedom, economic justice, and voting rights and protection. She was part of the Reproductive Freedom for All ballot proposal from its inception. Nomi received her BA from James Madison College, Michigan State University, and her Master's of Social Work from the University of Washington. Nomi is a member of Temple Kol Ami. She has 2 daughters in college and lives in Farmington Hills with her husband. Thank you all again for being here, and I'm going to hand it over to Nomi.
Yes, please do. Are these on? Can you hear me? Yes? I just wanted to make one small addition to the introduction to Senator Moss here, or maybe 2 actually. So he was, we are all thrilled with the gun violence movement that we've had. He was one of the original people to first create the legislation 8 years ago, 10 years ago, a long time ago, and continued to push it forward every 2 years. So without that.
Thank you. Thank you everyone so much for being here. I wanted to do this event combined with a Havdalah service because this is all about separation of Shabbat from Shavuot, and separation of religion and government. So with that, I want to tell you that everybody should have received a pink index card when they came in. My husband Corey waved to everybody. He also has extra pink cards. If you have any questions, then you can write it on your pink card and wave it, and Corey will collect it from you. If you are joining us from Zoom, we do have somebody transcribing. Rondi is volunteering in the back transcribing. So if you're on Zoom and you have a question, just put it in the chat and that will still get up to me. So with that, we have a lot of questions and we're gonna just dive right in. So first, this is a question for both of you. What do you think are the biggest religion-government separation issues that are currently facing the Michigan legislature? Whoever wants to start.
Okay, well, the most fundamental thing to me is that there is a favoritism that goes on all the time, that there is decidedly, as much as we technically have a separation, there is decidedly a kind of a white Christian leaning on every single thing that happens. And when you favor one group over another, the other group is blocked again and again, trying to block freedoms, services, purchases, rent, all kinds of things from anyone who is not part of that favored group. And that is clearly the favored group. We see it. And the other part is the gender piece, right? So anybody who is outside of the more traditional 50 years ago model of marriage and gender equity, they're good with that stuff. Anything else doesn't fit. They don't fit that favored model. So the fundamental issue is that white Christian, old school, antique is a good word for it, kind of opinion on almost everything.
Yeah, I agree. And it has all of that has an impact on our lawmaking. And I think, for 40 years in the state Senate, we had one majority that really allowed a biased view to impact all of our laws. We're now in a different majority. But I served 2 terms in the Michigan House and in my second term in the Michigan Senate for the first time in this new majority. But when I was a state House member, one of my predecessors in this Southfield area state representative was Maxine Berman, a friend to many of us here. I see a lot of nodding and smiling. And one thing Maxine Berman just couldn't tolerate, couldn't stand was going into session every day and hearing the invocation before session. So to kind of, give you an idea of what happens in Lansing is we start every day, the presiding officer gavels in the session. And then before COVID, each member of the legislature, either in the Senate or the House, went alphabetically to have their day to invite a guest or themselves to deliver the invocation. In my first term in the State House, I sat next to Andy Shore, who sat right by Robert Wittenberg. So we were the three Democratic, we called it the shtetl, the three Democratic Jewish lawmakers. And Andy and I would just take a tally on how many of those invocation prayers were not inclusive of who we were. I want to play one for you just to give you a sense of what it is like to be of a minority religion or of no religion at all, and hear the invocation on a daily basis. So this is a pastor who was an invited guest of a lawmaker opening the Michigan State Senate session.
Folks, if you've never done this before, I'm asking you to pray to God yourself. You can whisper it, you can say it out loud, but I'll give you the words that God wants to hear from you. God in heaven, I need your help. I have sinned. Jesus, I believe you died on the cross for my sins. Father, I believe you raised Jesus from the grave. Jesus, right now, I open my heart. I invite you in my life. Take control of my life. Make yourself known to me. Keep me from evil. Forgive me for my sins and become my Lord and Savior. And when you do that, you become sons and daughters of the Almighty God. Now, what he's told me to tell you folks is Michigan, I prayed that prayer at every fair in the state of Michigan. 100 fairs. I've been in all the prisons. I do it in prisons. I make ministers out of the inmates. I've been on the streets for 47 years and had gangs find Jesus. I've had Muslims find Christ. I've had witches find Christ.
Said witches find Christ. So, that is the opening of Senate session, and I'll close with this, the U.S. Constitution says Congress shall make no law with respect to religion. The Michigan Constitution says no person shall be compelled to attend or against his consent to contribute to the erection or support of any place of religious worship. There's a distinction there. It's not that our government will uplift all religions, and you have people who think that religion is the bedrock of our governance. It's that our government is silent on religion. Our government is not interfering with religion. Our government has a separation from people and their practice of religion. And so, as Rosemary said, we have people who want to lead with their own religious values and insert that in governance for the rest of us. And when laws are created out of that purview, a lot of people are excluded.
So to add to what Senator Moss said, that was the first thing that happened to me coming into session, was hearing the first prayer like that. I don't believe in that religion. I don't believe in that God. I didn't want to listen to that. And as time went forward, what was very clear was this, and that speech is a perfect example. It's an excuse for behavior. It's an excuse for decision-making because somebody else told them what to do. God told me to do blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you to do it too, right? No. So, it's pernicious. It's everywhere. It's every day. And so we don't have to listen to that prayer. We can stand outside in the hall and wait till it's over, which usually I do actually. But then it comes out in their conversation. It comes out in speeches on the floor. It comes out over and over again. That same notion that somebody else is telling me to do, somebody else is directing my work.
And one final thing, and I know we have a lot of questions. They have a right to believe that. They have absolutely a right to believe that. When it impacts the lawmaking for those of us who don't subscribe to that religious value is when it's really become a problem here in the state.
Wow. I'm very taken aback from that speech.
So I'll make a mention, you know, we stand every morning, and as that prayer was going on, I was just slowly gliding down to my chair.
Wow. Wow. Well, you touched on this a little bit already, Rosemary. Can you? Is that better? Yeah. Okay. White Christian nationalism is on the rise across the country. Can you describe any threats of white Christian nationalism that you have seen here in Michigan? What does that threat look like?
I now have a bulletproof vest. Let's start
Oh
with
my
that.
God.
It's under my desk. I take it every day. In April of 2020, I mean, we had the prime example in our capital, right? We had white Christian nationalists with big, huge guns in the Capitol building, looking down at us as we worked from the gallery, holding these huge, you know, AR something or others, and being the intimidating force that they wanted to be. Of course, and later we found out the whole rest of the story. One, it's practice for what they did on January 6th. Two, the full intent was the real plan. This was a practice, a warm up, come into the Capitol, shoot all the legislators, then go grab governor. take her out-
Burn down the building
burn down the
too.
building. Oh yeah, burn down the building. Go get the governor and kill her. That's in Michigan. That's in Lansing, Michigan. That's our Michiganders.
Yeah, you know, a lot of these are fueled with a lot of this white nationalist terrorism is fueled by ease of access to firearms. You know, we endured armed protests of COVID. They were going to shoot the virus, I guess. We endured armed protests of election results. And, you know, I support everybody's First Amendment right. I support the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia rather than what goes on right now, which is not well-regulated whatsoever. But when you bring firearms into the equation, it is only a sign of intimidation. And so there's been this intersection of free speech and Second Amendment that when it comes together in an intimidating way, there are limits on both to make sure that nobody's harmed, you know, on the other end of it.
Well, I just have to say, and I feel that I'm probably speaking for everyone when I say thank you both so much for your service. I'm sure when you decided to go into public office, you did not realize you were taking literally your lives in your hands to do so.
So one additional note, it was April 30th, 2020. That was the day where you saw all the pictures of gunmen in our Capitol building, and it just happened to be my day for the invocation. I passed, to be honest with you, on it because as the only Jewish member of the Senate, as the only gay member of the Senate, I just didn't feel like it was safe for me to be at the front of the room as all of this was playing out. So you really have to, you know, you walk into work because I'm passionate about service. I'm passionate about solving my neighbor's problems. I'm passionate about it. It's challenging, it's rewarding, it's gratifying. You know, I didn't sign up to go into someone else's church, and I certainly didn't sign up to get shot at work.
So that week, because I had a call from our local police chief who said, hey, do you want a vest? We'll give you a vest. No, I don't need that. And 2 days later, I was walking out to the parking garage out of our office building and, you know, hear the door behind me open and close, and I look around because I figured I know who it is. And sure enough, it's a guy wearing some fake army clothes and an AR-15 following me out of the building. And I was already past the stairs. He was at the stairs. So I couldn't get back to the door. I couldn't get to the stairs down where the guards were. My only choice was to get to my car. You know, how safe is that? Right? And leave as fast as possible. And on the way, I called the police. He said, you know, I'm gonna stop by on my way home and pick that up. And I will tell you this, 2 days ago, no, yesterday, Friday, I had a coffee hour. We do coffee hours all the time. This is the best part of the job, is talking to you all hearing from people. And I got a note from a couple friends, 2 people sent me notes saying that there were a couple of gun clubs sending out text messages to their members telling them that gun grabbing Bayer is having a coffee hour, and maybe we should go tell her what we think. And sure enough, a whole boatload of them came. So we called and had police there. And so there were other people, because I was afraid they would scare everyone else out. You know, we had older people, noon on Friday, right? Older folks, and afraid that they would come toting big guns and scare everybody out. I mean, this is what we get to do all the time now.
Wow. So I'm going to take this in a bit of a different direction. This was a question that our staff came up with, but then the exact same question was emailed to me from somebody who's on Zoom from another organization. So there is a congressional free thought caucus on the national level that inspired the formation of a secular values caucus in New Hampshire and a secular democracy caucus in Minnesota. These are caucuses that are made up of legislators from various faiths and no faith who are committed to defending the separation of religion and government, protecting the rights of both religious and non-religious people, and advancing science and evidence-based public policy. Is there anything like this in Michigan? And if not, would you be open to helping start such a caucus? And we're going to get you here on record.
Yeah, no, good. I think this is a good idea. There is no caucus like that in legislature, and I think it is a good idea. There is, however, I don't know if it's the prayer
Prayer breakfast.
Yes, every Thursday morning, there's a prayer breakfast caucus. And when I was a House member, there was an email that went out to talk about some upcoming event with the prayer caucus. And it was only with Christian pastors and Christian clergy. And Andy Shore, who, again, one of my Jewish colleagues in the House at the time, sent a note to the person who was the legislator, who was the head of the prayer caucus, and said, you know, I don't see a lot of diversity in who's presenting at this event. You know, you don't have Muslim clergy, you don't have Jewish clergy, you don't have whatever, you know, certainly we have prayers as well. And the response back was, oh, thank you for the flag, but this is just for Christians. So that's what we have now. I think it's a good idea to have, you know, inclusion for all the rest of us.
So Senator Moss, do I have you on record that
Yeah,
you're going,
yes.
that you'll help start a caucus?
We can make that happen.
Okay. Senator Bear?
Yeah, the first time I was invited to the breakfast, I think they had tried to shift the messaging around it to be more open. Not that they were going to have different clergy, but anyone was welcome. The idea was to build camaraderie, to get to know each other better. So, and I said, okay, I'll go. Yeah, sure. I want to meet everybody. And, you know, I was brand new and sat down and immediately noticed everyone opening their Bibles. And I didn't even make it to the whole first one, and I never went again. I'm not going to go to a prayer breakfast where everybody opens their Bibles first thing. The person that was talking that day was flipping through his Bible as he's telling his life story. And when God told him to do this, and God told him. So yeah, I'll join.
And do we have you on record that you'll help start this caucus?
I actually considered trying to take on this issue right when I first started in my first term in the Senate, my first time ever working in government at all. And our political advisor said, is this what you want to be known for right away? So we didn't really pick it up yet, but this might be a better time.
This will be the time. Okay. This is being recorded, by the way.
Now it's okay.
So I know I'm looking around and I'm seeing so many people here who collected signatures for the Reproductive Freedom for All campaign, including Senator Moss, who helped volunteer, and Senator Bear, who sat with me with a bunch of people in front of Kol Ami, with Rondi helping set it up, collecting signatures. But despite the fact that we enshrined reproductive freedom in our state constitution, we still have several laws in the book that limited abortion access, such as state mandated counseling, 24-hour waiting period, parental consent laws, and we also do not have public funding for abortion. How are these old laws related to church-state separation? How are they being addressed? And if you can also talk about the Reproductive Freedom Act. Reproductive Healthcare Freedom,
sure.
Reproductive Healthcare Act.
Well, as it turns out, there are 750 instances of restrictions on abortion access in our laws still. So even though as soon as we could this year, one of the first things we did in our first 100 days was repeal the primary sections of code that make abortion a felony. There's 750 other things in there scattered throughout the code that impact your ability to get the services that you need. So it's a new project. So we're going to begin the effort of trying to find out how can we take that on. I turned to the Planned Parenthood folks, we were talking to them Thursday, and said, well, there's 20 of us in the Senate, and then there's, 26, 56 in the House. So that's a pretty big dent. We'll just get working on it and work our way through. So we recognize that we're not done with that task yet.
Ditto.
That's the shortest answer I've ever heard you give to anything,
I'm saving my words for the next.
Jared. Well, the next question's for you. First of all, I want to thank you for all the work that you have done to add LGBTQ plus protections to the Elliott Larson Civil Rights. And a hearty mazel tov on your success. I know you worked on that for a very, very long time. Can you talk about what the process was like? I also am curious if this bans conversion therapy, and how will the expansion of ELCRA protect the LGBT community in Michigan?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Back in 2014, when I ran for the legislature, there was me and John Hoadley running as out LGBTQ members candidates. And then there were those on this far right fringe using their religion to defeat Elliott Larson. So Elliott Larson really was on the ballot back in 2014 in terms of who was getting elected to the legislature. The people who came against Elliott Larson and delayed it from being enacted from that 2014 election cycle up until it was signed into law this past year. I mean, it was Todd Corser and Cindy Gamrat who were having an affair with one another and using state resources to cover it up. It was Lee Chatfield, who has now been alleged to have been raping his sister-in-law. And they were saying that we were the ones, who were defying, scripture and defying, biblical texts, and that's the reason why Elliott Larson shouldn't pass. So it's kind of mystifying, I'm the one who's going to diminish religion when you have these people who have been plagued with their own issues. And it was even borne out, again, through the debate on Elliott Larson. I knew we had the votes to push this forward once we got our Democratic majority. But one senator spoke for 30 minutes against it, citing his religious interpretation of text as his opposition. He has every right to believe that. He has no right to put that into the law for the rest of us. We had another senator, Senator Runstead, who wanted to add further religious protections in Elliott Larson. Now, religion is a protected class from discrimination. None of you can be fired or evicted or put out of a place because of your religion. It's already a protected class. He wanted to make it so that someone's religion could actually allow them to fire or deny you services if your protected category doesn't comply with their religion. For all this, advocacy for separating religion and government, I am religious. I'm proud to be a member of the Jewish community. And so I came to the microphone and I said, if you really want religion to trump everything else, if you really want religion to be the factor that people can discriminate against, there's gonna be a lot more problems than just with LGBTQ folks. There's anti-women verses that you can pull out. There's every single protected class in any religion is going to have a category that is problematic to them. But they wanted their religion to supersede what LGBTQ folks should have as protections, equal protection under the law. So it was very challenging that, here we are, we couldn't even push forward on civil rights, but for the majority party's religious values. Even though my religious values and your religious values are inclusive of LGBTQ protections. And I kind of pointed out that paradox because from 2004 was the marriage amendment that restricted marriage for just heterosexual couples. And it was defeated, or it was overturned with Obergefell in 2015. But from that period of time, from 2004 to 2015, there were religious leaders who would have performed same-sex marriages, but it was the state discriminating against their religious freedom. So how come this group of people can't get religious freedom for that period of time? And now all of a sudden you want to uplift religious freedom to continue to discriminate against those people. So very challenging to kind of weave through their thought process. But I'm proud to say that we did pass this amendment and had no added text to make sure that religion stays separate from civil rights here in Michigan.
Thank you. I also want to remind you that if you have any questions on your pink cards, just wave them in the air and someone will come and pick them up from you. I think there's one here, one in the back, one here. My husband will pick them up. Thank you. Senator Baer, I know in the past that you have co-sponsored legislation to ban child marriage in Michigan. For most people are not aware of the current law. Currently, there is no minimum age for marriage. Children from 16 to 18 can be forced into marriage with the signature of a single parent. Children from age birth to age 16 can be forced into marriage with the signature of a judge. A bill to ban all child marriage with no exception is about to be introduced. Can you please explain how this is related to religion-state separation? And please enlighten us about what the opposition's argument is. Why has this been so hard to get past the ban?
Yeah, it's kind of scary when it sort of, kind of relates to one of the things that Senator Moss was talking about a few minutes ago too, the behavior that seems to be okay in some of those other kinds of religions. I mean, it's just horrible. So, and it does seem to be based, the idea that you can marry at a very early age seems to be driven more by religious standards. And it's usually, of course, the young girl or the child girl who gets married to an older man for whatever purposes from the parents. Unfortunately, in a lot of those far right religions, those conservative religions, that is an accepted practice. It's normal, it's okay, it's part of their religion. And so they've been carrying it on forever because it's okay, because God told them it's okay, and so therefore it is. It's just horrifying, and even as young as new young babies even getting sold or given to men for marriage, to use as they see fit whenever they're ready to do that. So it's really horrific. But yes, so now we are facing a better opportunity to pass a small set of bills that will change that. That'll make it required that 18 is the minimum age for marriage. And for anyone who is already married and still under 18, they will then immediately have all of the same privileges and adult status as the other partner, as the other person. So a young girl that got forced to be married at 12 or 14, she would all of a sudden have the same legal protection. So her parents would no longer have ability to say for her, she would be an adult. So then she could get, it's actually even says in one of the laws that she's allowed to have legal representation in case she wants out of that arrangement. But it doesn't force her to do that, but it gives her the ability to do that. So finally, we're gonna change something that has been on the books forever and is just horrifying.
Thank you. And I know there's going to be hearings on that in a few weeks.
Very soon, yeah.
Yeah. So I know one focus of this current legislature has been to get rid of zombie laws. Can you please explain what a zombie law is and which zombie laws are relevant to religion government separation that you're currently working to repeal.
Well, if you know that 1931 abortion felony was a zombie law, it was dormant. It was declared unconstitutional through Roe versus Wade. No legislature had the gumption or courage to repeal it because we kind of rested on, we thought, some of us thought Roe was there forever. There were some of us who sounded the alarm to repeal it anyways. And had it not been for Governor Whitmer's action before the Supreme Court, had it not been for you putting forward proposal 3, we would have immediately reverted back, raising from the dead this 1931 abortion felony. But Prop 3, undid its enforceability, and then we repealed it, and Governor Whitmer signed that into law. But I will tell you, in Clarence Thomas's opinion, overturning Roe, he said Obergefell is next. That's the marriage equality decision. Right now, in our state constitution still exists that 2004 language that restricts marriage just between a heterosexual couple. If Obergefell falls, which in a post-Roe world, anything can happen, we revert right back to that language. That's a zombie statute in our constitution. The only way to get rid of that is a vote of the public. So much like we did with Prop 3, we are going to have to engage on a ballot proposal to amend our constitution and get rid of that restrictive language that would be in effect if Obergefell falls, that marriage is between a man and a woman. We were one of the last, if you can call us a blue state, but we were one of the only states that never voted for George W. Bush. So at one point, we were kind of this solidly blue state that only had our marriage ban overturned by the court. Every other state, California and others, well, maybe California was through a Supreme Court decision, but other states took care of it. Other states removed that language. Other states repealed those laws. We didn't here in Michigan. Obergefell is the only reason there's marriage equality. So that's another zombie law that could come up.
But that has to be done. The legislature can't do that. That has to be done
because it was in our
by
constitution. The only way to change our constitution is a vote of the public.
And what other zombie laws? Like, I know there's the sodomy law, the adultery law, the cohabitation law, and somebody specifically asked a question about the cohabitation law. Can you talk about, what efforts are there to repeal those? Are there others that we don't even know about?
We took a vote to repeal this archaic law criminalizing, what did they say? It was lewd and lascivious. If you cohabitate with an unmarried person of the opposite sex, you are lewd and lascivious, and you have broken the law. There's an irony, though, that it doesn't impact same-sex people. So, as an ally to the straight community, I voted to repeal that. But again, and I think there was a sense there, and we can all nod, there was a sense that Roe settled the issue. Obviously, there were many of us who still wanted to clean up laws, enshrine it further, protect it. We all now live in a post-Roe world where rights that have been opined by the court aren't settled unless the law of the land matches it.
And the repealing the cohabitation law is still being fought out in the legislature, or
well, we passed it out of the Senate, so it's moved over to the House, and
with people arguing against repealing it.
A whole bunch of arguments, long speeches, yes.
But yeah, there's a lot of cleanup.
There are
40
other
years of
things.
cleanup.
We do have a lot of and recognizing that everything's at risk that's in there now. Now that we know what could happen to us, we really do have to go find them all. There are some funny ones where there's one that you could actually get arrested for swearing. You take the Lord's name in vain. There's that God thing getting in the way again, too.
There's actually, and interestingly enough, there's a law against adultery here in the state of Michigan.
Right.
When they were coming after the LGBTQ community and having their own skeletons, I was, I wanted to put forward a resolution to enforce that and see how they would like it.
But we are going to do some cleanup work, and that's why we spent some time working on the reproductive rights piece, and we're going to keep looking for the things that could just really rip us apart, just because of what's happening in the Supreme Court.
So you just talked about that we need to have a ballot initiative to get rid of this Defensive Marriage Act. Are there any other ballot initiatives, things you can't do in the legislature, other ballot initiatives that you think that we need to work on?
Getting the money out of politics.
Say
getting the
more
money
about
out
that.
of campaigns. We are one of the few democratic or countries who actually have a system where we have to raise funds for our campaigns to run for office ourselves. So that means you have to go ask for money. Now, if you ask the constituents, will you vote for me, give me $5 and help me win, right? That seems very reasonable. But what's happened, of course, is it's completely out of control. Elections cost millions of dollars. That doesn't come from $5 from you. That comes from very large sources of money that you are then beholden to in one way or another. And often those very dark sources of money that nobody even knows where the money's coming from, those dark PACs, the things that were allowed by Citizens United. There are some things we can do at the state level to restrict and control what happens here and how we fund campaigns. Most countries, most democratic countries, the government pays for campaigns. And think about it. Not only would it cost less, because it would say, like, maybe for a state Senate run, they would say, here's your $200,000. You have 3 months to campaign. No commercials for a year. No, I mean, just imagine how great that would be. And we would save so much money. And yeah, it would be phenomenal. So, and there is a group that started working on that.
And I serve as chair of the elections committee, elections and ethics committee in the state Senate. And we are going to be engaging on a lot of work to reform our campaign finances, to limit the amount of influence on money, especially dark money, untraceable money, unreportable money that impacts our politics here in Michigan.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I have to thank the person who emailed me this question, because it taught me about something that I did not know anything about, which are healthcare sharing ministries, HCSMs. They have turned into a significant industry across the country in recent years. They typically present themselves as religion-based alternatives to conventional health insurance, but in reality, they act just like an insurance company, but without the transparency or the consumer protections that exist with normal insurance companies. Healthcare sharing ministries are exempt from requirements under the ACA, but some states have passed laws to plug that gap and to protect consumers. Are you aware of any efforts to work on this in Michigan?
I'm not, and the insurance industry is really powerful in our state. So I don't think they would do as well here, maybe. I don't know the answer to that. I have not heard of that.
Yeah, it's something I'll have to look into.
Okay.
We don't have all the answers.
That's right. You're going to get a call from one of
I
our.
actually think our
Zoom
insurance industry is a little
participants about
too powerful, to be honest.
So I love this question. Has the damage Betsy DeVos caused as Trump's education secretary started to be reversed by Biden and Michigan Democratic legislature?
So I will tell you, I was glad Betsy DeVos was in Washington, D.C. and out of Michigan for 4 years. She hovered over this majority in the state legislature for way too long. So getting her out of Michigan politics was actually a good thing. But yeah, listen, so we want to make sure public dollars go to public education. That's what the Constitution guarantees. And last year, and I know Senator Baird can speak more to this because she sits on the Appropriations Committee, we not only voted for this historic appropriations to our K through 12, but we closed the gap between those affluent school districts that receive a lot and those challenged school districts that don't receive enough. So we are moving forward on promoting, protecting every child's right to a free and public education here in the state of Michigan. That enough, I'm sure, is making Betsy DeVos's head spin in circles. But you know, most
Claps for
importantly,
Betsy DeVos.
you, for the very first time, have a majority in both chambers that is not bought and paid for by the DeVos family. And it's going to make a huge difference in governance here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the fundamental issue is that that side of the equation is not, they don't want to fund public education. They want to have private education. And everything that she tried to do in Michigan, and everything that she tried to do, the Republicans in Michigan have tried again and again to change our system so that we have to pay for private schools. We have to do vouchers. We have to do all the different ways of talking about it, to take our tax dollars and put it into private education, which we have no control over, often is religious, not always, but often. But it certainly isn't fair. It certainly isn't equitable. It certainly doesn't take care of the people who really need help in getting a good quality education. So we are in a better place now. We're stronger now. We need to maintain the majority so that we can hold on to this and keep building out that system, improve the results.
So while we're talking about education, let's talk about the efforts to ban books and protests in school libraries. What can be done at the state level to ensure that books are not removed from our schools and our libraries?
Yeah, it's embarrassing, this whole conversation, that this is the crisis of our times, you know, is literature and books that allow a student to see themselves when they read about experiences, and to understand someone else's lived experience when they read about other lived experiences. We are commemorating, or we just commemorated Library Week, Public Library Week. It got out of the Senate with the voice vote, no controversy, but in the House, there was a record roll call vote. And I think every single Republican, save one, voted against a non-binding symbolic resolution to honor our librarians and our libraries. It's just ridiculous. And so, yes, obviously we want to protect access of literature to folks. I know that there's a county prosecutor, I think in Lapeer, that was going to start criminalizing and prosecuting, and the attorney general said, no, you're not. So, you know, I don't think you'll see too much activity on that front here in Michigan without a very vociferous response from those of us who want to protect access to books.
The challenge is that we can't actually prohibit what's happening. So the parents are basically threatening school people. They're trying to take over school boards, as many of you have seen and battled in elections recently. But they're so loud. It's kind of like the folks that come and harass us with guns. The same thing is true with the book banners, and they're threatening to the point where schools are giving in. They're caving in and saying, okay, we'll put that book away. Okay, we'll put that book away, because it's easier than trying to fight the fight. And there's no law to protect it. I don't know. I mean, it's a challenge, because it's something we talk about and have been thinking about, is what can we do? It's not illegal for the school to say, at our parents' request, we're not going to have this book anymore. The problem is, of course, by not having those books, this is back to, we're changing the story to match one single group's opinion of what matters and what's truth. It's usually fundamental, right, in that far right fringy thing. It's not my belief. I want my kids to have all those books. I want them to have all those ideas and all those choices. So we are going to have to keep fighting it back. I don't know if we're going to be able to come up with a way to mandate that you keep all the books. I mean, I don't know if that's going to work. We have a state where the system itself in education is very much local control. So we give them money for their libraries, and then they choose the books that go in there. And schools are always influenced by parents, right? That's a good thing. Usually it's a good thing. So I don't know, maybe we're thinking about ways to beef up the strength of the administrators who are dealing with this, the librarians who are dealing with this, to try to help. But I don't think it's going to go away in the immediate term. And so there's things for us to do all as the public is to pay attention to elections for things like school boards. You know, it never was as important as it is right now, I think. That if the budgets, they make the decision about what the money gets spent on in that school. They make decisions about books and librarians and closing down libraries. I was in school 2 days ago. There were hardly any books in that school library. And I thought that was sad. I mean, that is definitely going to impact literacy for those kids. Not having a librarian to learn from, not having books in the school. So what we do on those local elections really matters. That's my first biggest recommendation.
And I'll put in my plug that I'd like to invite everybody in this room to run for your local school board or your local library board. So I want to go back to guns. I have two questions, so I'm gonna read these together. Every Capitol building I've been in has security like at the airport. Why are guns allowed into the government buildings? And you can answer this one maybe at the same time. Are there any restrictions on the sale of AR-15 weapons in Michigan? And why can't we stop the sale of these in Michigan?
I can talk about the state capitol and you can talk about the work ahead in our gun violence prevention caucus. So when you enter it before 2020, again, there was this really major changing event on April 30th, 2020, with this chaos in the state capitol. Before that, when you walked into the state capitol in the state of Michigan, there was only one prohibited item that you could not bring with you into the state capitol.
Signs.
And it was poster board. It was signs. It was signs. That's what it said on the state capitol. No signs beyond this point. Could bring guns into the capitol, and every day there was every year there was an open carry day. Every day was an open carry day, but they had a day where these groups specifically wanted to demonstrate that they were open carrying in the state capitol. So when people were walking around with guns on April 30th, 2020, it was unnerving, but it was not unusual here in the state of Michigan. What's interesting is that if you go to Austin, Texas, right, the gunniest state in the country, and in fact, the same designer, the same architect, Elijah Myers of our state capitol, was the same architect of the Texas state capitol. If you know, this is a total aside, if you know how to get your way around the Michigan capitol, it's literally the exact same floor plan as the Texas state capitol, except they have metal detectors. And I've been in the Texas state capitol a few times. So it's just, there's just this delicious irony, this just total disconnect, that in Texas, it's an exact replica of our own Capitol building. And the Texans who are, pro Second Amendment and want to have no gun laws can't take their firearms into the Texas state capitol. And it's not this huge mind-blowing controversy. But here, oh my goodness, you'd think that we were, doing the worst thing in the world by protecting staff and lawmakers. We have gun-free zones here in the state of Michigan. You cannot bring a gun into a place of worship, a school, a bar. Could you imagine a bar fight and how that would end if we were allowing everybody to carry guns in there? There's heated rhetoric in the Capitol building. There's passions. There's conflict. We don't want to add to that by giving somebody access to solve that conflict and that passion with a firearm. So our Capitol Commission has finally voted to ban open carry in the Michigan Capitol and is looking to even go further in protection of those who serve in the state capitol, and is actually actively, this was just announced, soliciting bids for metal detectors at the state capitol.
So are you saying this is a decision from the Capitol Commission, not the state legislature?
This could be a decision from the state legislature.
We are also going to introduce the bills
Yes.
to make sure that gets into law as
Could
well.
be. But with the shift of the majority, we have our appointees to the Capitol Commission. And so we have appointees who are aligned with the values of protecting those who work and visit the state capitol. And so they are going through that work right now.
Yeah. And we're excited to pass some legislation as well to hold on to that, even if the commission changes its colors, and we'll do that. But the other questions about AR-15s, yes, you can buy an AR-15. Right now, there is basically no regulation on them at all. After the legislation that we just passed goes into effect, which won't be until early next year, by the way. Once that goes into effect, then for AR-15s and any other firearm, every type of firearm will be required to have a background check and a registration. So, for AR-15s, right now, you only need one. Yes, thank you. Finally, right? Yeah, the only thing we do now is we do background checks for handguns. If you buy them from a licensed firearm dealer, a federally licensed dealer. So if you go to a gun show, you can still go buy one. You can buy an AR-15, you can give one to your brother, you know. So this will change all of that. Any change of ownership, you will have to register the gun.
But are there bills being proposed to actually ban AR-15s completely? It-
We have a piece of legislation that we created last term. I did, actually. And it's still sitting there. I also have a bill that will require smaller capacity. So no, I think it was 8, no.
10, I think it was 10.
Was it 10? Thank
Yeah.
you. 10. So we have those and we can use those. The challenge is whether or not they would pass at this point. And we ran 3 big packages of bills, and they're the same 3 that other states are doing, right? We are actually working with all the other states on this. We're very much working nationally since we can't get it done federally like we should. We're working with each other. And those are the 3. And it's because of the groundswell of support from the people. So here in Michigan, all those 3 things, the universal background checks and the safe storage and the extremist protection orders all had support over 85% of Michiganders, including Republican gun owners, right? 85% and up, 91 or 96% for the background checks, just amazing support. So it was easy to do. I mean, as much as we knew we weren't going to get Republicans because they're just not going to vote for anything like that ever, we knew that we were doing the right thing. The latest polls on semi-automatics or assault weapons, it's close to 50-50. So there's not a groundswell of support yet. And hopefully we don't get a lot of shootings with those where we build a groundswell. But I think part of what our work is we need, because we have actually had a little bit of a challenge getting all those bills through the House of Representatives. With a very tiny majority, one person, we've seen this in our US Senate, right? One person causes a shift. One person didn't want to vote on that bill and didn't come that day, and they couldn't take the vote because they weren't going to win. So it matters a lot. Anyway, so it matters what the people think. That's how we're kind of choosing our path. There are many other things that we're doing. Hopefully we'll get to those big guns and certainly reduce put a limit on the capacity, at least on the smaller ones. And we're doing a lot of other things in intervention programming. We got a new Office of Violence Intervention created. I got to allocate the money to create the office as well as grants for communities. So your communities can apply. All of the programs that we started in the last 2 years are successful. Every single one is showing success. Some within weeks, others take a little bit longer depending on the model, but they're all making a difference. So we are slowly going to get there. Hopefully we'll do more legislation too that speeds it up. These 3 packages are known to reduce violence in different states by as much as 40% within the first year. So we are really excited about where we are and what we've been able to finally do, taking our first steps.
So when you're talking about very thin majorities and the feelings in the House, really being very close, I'm also aware that there are a few representatives who are going to be vacating their term early because they're pursuing other offices. Can you talk about that? How long will those communities be without a representative? What's the process to fill those spots? How's that gonna change the landscape?
So one House member, again, they have a 1-seat majority. One House member is running for mayor of Westland. One House member is running for mayor of Warren. We worked really, really hard to secure these majorities. And so if they are elected, I believe one of the mayoral offices takes office immediately after the election. The other is in January. So the governor schedules special elections here in the state of Michigan. So it would be on the governor to fill those. They're both strong Democratic seats, but yeah, it would leave us without a majority in the House for as long as that vacancy is open. A lot of opinions on that.
I was gonna say, you might, do you have any feelings about that?
Really, we all worked really
Yeah.
hard to secure these majorities.
And I will also remind us that we are a nonpartisan organization, but I know that this affects a lot of the issues that we're talking about. I'm going to completely change the subject and talk about death with dignity. There are 10 states plus the District of Columbia that now allow medical aid in dying, also referred to as death with dignity, so that terminally ill adults can choose a peaceful medically assisted death rather than being forced to endure the final phase of an illness. My understanding is that the main objections to these kinds of bills are rooted in religion. Have any death with dignity bills been proposed in Michigan?
Actually, yes. And in the previous legislatures, former state representative Tom Cochran introduced these bills. Former state representative and now state senator Sam Singh introduced these bills. I had a constituent reach out to me last year with a really heartbreaking story of watching his wife suffer. And the law did not allow them to make their own personal choices on death with dignity, on end of life care. And so we are aware of the issue and likely to reengage on those legislative efforts. But when I was in the House, this was, again, legislation that was offered, never made it through the process, but there are lawmakers who have been championing this.
Okay. I'm going to try and, we have a few more minutes. I'm going to try and plow through some of these. So this is like a factual question. Is there a law that if a petition, like a citizen initiated petition, is brought to the legislature, that the legislature can pass it into law without the governor's approval? And wasn't this used to take away the governor's emergency power? Should this be removed, which I believe is in the Constitution? So I don't think the legislature can remove that.
Well, you really want to join me into the weeds here.
Let's try to do it short. I mean, obviously this has happened. So if you go back a few years, one of the ballot initiatives was for fair wages, for raising the minimum wage and on a schedule, bringing people up to something that you could actually live on. It was a great ballot initiative. It had a huge support. It was decidedly going to pass. But as soon as it had enough votes to make it on the ballot, the legislature chose to adopt it instead of waiting for the ballot, for the actual election to happen, adopted that, and then proceeded to change all the numbers. So rather than being at $12 an hour, it was $3.26 by 2029 or, I mean, just outrageously changed it to be completely opposite of the intent. And that went into law.
Maybe just adding on another half a minute. We can introduce laws and you can introduce laws. It's an initiated law that first makes a pit stop at the legislature if there are enough signatures to put it into law. We choose one of two routes, actually three routes. Route number one is we send it to the ballot for your support. Proposal one, the marijuana law in 2018, you collected the signatures, legislature didn't want to touch it, sent it right on to the voters, voters approved it. The other option is the legislature can just adopt it outright. And there have been ballot proposals that we've just adopted outright. The third option is not usually used, but we could put a competing proposal on the ballot. So you would vote for A or for B. That hasn't happened in a very long time. But yes, so if there's an initiated law that comes to the legislature and it's either we approve it or you vote for it, it takes 3/4 vote to amend that. Unless it's in the same legislative session, then it's murky. So if every time we go into the marijuana law that you approved, we need 3/4 votes to change it. When a petition comes to us and lawmakers gut it. It's just a simple majority to gut it, as Rosemary said. We should have the same 3/4 vote to change it within the same session as if it was passed in an additional later session. So, I mean, it's kind of in the weeds, but I'm trying to put up, and I've introduced this legislation in the past to put up more safeguards from just a simple majority in the legislature gutting the contents of the majority of the people.
Will
So
of the
that's
people.
something that would be taken care of in the legislature. It wouldn't have to be a
It
constitutional
would have to be a
change?
constitutional change.
Okay. All right. And that case, by the way, that Senator Bear was talking about is heading to the Michigan Supreme Court.
Yes.
The adopted amendment. This is going to, I apologize to everyone if I didn't have time to get to your question. This is going to be our last question. Are there areas where you think that a blurring of the religion and government that religion and government is acceptable? For example, a prayer breakfast, opening sessions with prayers, having a Christmas tree on the Capitol lawn. Why are these things okay or not okay?
Let's talk about the Christmas tree.
My
There
bad.
is a 60-foot Christmas tree that gets established every November and stays there for the rest of the year. Every other religious symbol during the holiday time has to be 4 foot by 4 foot by 3 foot. And it has to be assembled every morning and taken down every afternoon. I have been, first of all, well, I won't go there, but I have been very vocal about allowing a menorah to be 60 feet or less next to the Christmas tree. Well, when I was a little mouthy about it, I was told, well, it's not really a Christmas tree, it's a holiday tree. To which I said, well, let's put a holiday candelabra right next to the holiday tree.
All right.
I've introduced a resolution to allow a menorah not to be, 4 foot. They actually had a menorah that was one of the local Chabad houses donated, and it was just over 4 feet. So they actually had to saw off the base of it so that it could fit into that 4 foot, 4 foot, 3 foot parameters. So yeah, every year they tell me it's a holiday tree, and then every year the Michigan State Capitol posts, "We're so glad to have the Christmas tree back," and I flag it every single time. I thought it was a holiday tree. So it's that the Christmas tree is just a challenging sign that when people talk about religious values, it has to be encompassing of everybody or nobody. And when it's a Christmas tree, there are a lot of others who feel like their deeply held religious beliefs are excluded when Christmas trees this tall and the menorah or the whatever, has to be there has to be extra labor to set it up and take it down every night.
It's wildly unfair, and every time I see it, it's infuriating to me. I don't think any of them should be there. There's always going to be somebody left out.
So Andy,
In our work, oh, sorry.
no, I was gonna say Andy Shore, the legislator I spoke about, is now the mayor of Lansing, and every year wheels out a menorah from Lansing City Hall to put next to the Christmas tree now when they light the Christmas tree.
That's nice. It's nice. It's not good though, because there are lots of other religions and people who don't have any of those symbols. So it needs to stop. In our work, it's interesting because when you sent us that question, I thought about it in a serious way. I would like to have zero evidence of religion. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it should be, period. And then I thought about, one of the things I work on consistently and diligently and with some tiny amounts of progress is on homelessness. And we have some of our providers of services to people who desperately need it, our churches. And they get help from us. And we're probably going to keep helping them because we need people who will help. And the one good thing about any established church type situation is that usually there's some kind of a modicum of help to the community that comes out of it. And so any establishment that has that kind of community support as its base and really can make a difference for people that really need it, I hope they ask us for help, and I hope we give it to you.
I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Congregation for Humanistic Judaism for hosting us. I want to thank all of our many co-sponsors. I'm afraid to list them because I'm afraid I will forget one of them. And I especially would like to thank Senator Moss and Senator Bear, not only for being here for tonight, but for all of their service. Thank you very much.